Changing the oil and filter on your car, especially if it's a petrol-based performance car like this one, my 2013 Audi S4, is a really important service item that, if left undone for a long enough period, can be pretty catastrophic, and it's also normally one of the easiest and quickest to do, give or take. Now, getting a shop to do it would cost you, at least for this car, around £110, whereas the oil alone that I'm using, and the filter and even the sump plug washer, altogether only add up to about £60, so I'm saving a fair amount for only a couple hours of work. Either way, I need to change the oil, so I thought I'd bring you along and show you each of the different steps that it takes to do it, so let's get into it. So first things first, you will want to jack up the car. If you can keep it as level as possible, that is better, although it's not the end of the world if you can. I'm only jacking up the front here with some chocks at the back wheels so that it doesn't roll onto me, and putting it on 2 jack stands either side. Once it's up in the air, you will then want to remove the oil filler cap to help the oil drain out of the engine nice and quickly, and then you will want to crack the oil filter housing loose. This is a 36mm socket and will be fairly tight, so be prepared for it to put up a bit of a fight, but make sure you don't round it because it is just plastic. You'll then want to remove the under tray. You may find a mix of fasteners here, as I have, but the majority of them will be this twist style one, which has a Phillips head. Just make sure you apply enough pressure to them when you twist them and you should be good to go. They are fairly expensive, so make sure you don't lose any. Then you'll have access to the sump plug, which is a 6mm Allen, so make sure you have your drain pan underneath, and then make sure that the Allen key is all the way in. You really don't want to be stripping this. But when you do, and it will put up a bit of a fight, it will start dripping almost immediately, so I would recommend wearing gloves already. I wouldn't put one on, but generally recommended. Either way, you can take the sump plug out, and while it is draining, which might take a little while, you can go and replace the sump plug washer. Now, the one that was on here, sort of when I got it, was a copper crush washer. I'm using aluminium. They're fairly interchangeable, but just make sure that you do replace it. It is a major potential fault or flaw if you don't. That is the thing that keeps the oil in your engine, keeps the plug nice and seated, so definitely replace that when you do this oil change. You can also replace the sump plug itself, although mine was in good condition, so I'm not bothering. And you want to clean up the surface as you tighten it down. It gets tightened to 22 foot-pounds or around 30 newton meters, and I again recommend you do use a torque wrench for this, because you don't want to over tighten it and strip out the threads, but you also don't want to under tighten it and have it leak oil everywhere, especially with the under tray. You might not even know. Either way, once it is tight, you can then very carefully remove your definitely too small drain pan. This takes about 6 to 7 litres of oil, so you will want a nice big one, which I don't have. And then you can refit the under tray, again with all of those twist tie fasteners. Like I said, they're fairly expensive, so make sure that you do refit all of them, and you obviously don't want the under tray falling off when you're on the motorway or anything like that. Once you're up top, or once you're done underneath, you can then move back into the engine bay and remove the oil filter housing. I put a bit of kitchen roll here so that some of the oil that will inevitably spill out won't go down the sides of the engine, although inevitably you will need to clean stuff up anyway, so don't worry too much, but a bit can always help. Either way, when you take the filter out, you can then pop the old filter off. It's basically just friction fit, so gently pull it apart, and then you can replace the O-ring seal that's inside the cap. You will want a pick for this, it makes it a lot easier, but basically you just pull it out, and then when you're fitting the new O-ring, you will want to use some of the old oil and coat it so that when we put it back in, it's lubricated nicely, especially because this is a sealing surface. We don't want this to be leaking, and we don't want to break it or rip it as we tighten the oil filter housing down. You will of course want to fit your new filter, which again just pops into place. Make sure that it's seated all the way down, otherwise you won't fit the oil filter cap back in. It just pops in, so carefully press it down, and then you want to replace the O-ring that's on the engine side of the oil filter housing. Again, it's a very small O-ring. A pick can help you do this, and it might be a bit of a pain to get it on. As you can see, I'm kind of struggling, but you just gently prise it on and you're all good to go. Again, making sure that it's pre-oiled before you go fitting the housing or the cap back in, and then you can screw it down. This also gets tightened to around 30 Newton meters. I think it's more like 35, but around that area, and you should be good to go. Remember, this is plastic, so you don't want to be breaking this, and you definitely don't want to be rounding the head of the plastic nut that's on top. So do it carefully, do it slowly, and as long as it's nice and tight, you're pretty much good to go. Now I'm using liquid moly 5W40 here, as this meets all of the requirements for the engine. It's a pretty decent quality oil, and I got it for a really good deal on eBay, which I'll leave in the description down below. Either way, this engine needs a little more than 6 litres. If you're doing a filter, it needs 6.8, so that's what I'm going to be filling. Of course, you want to fill this with a funnel. You definitely don't want this pouring all down your engine. Trust me, I've done it. It's not fun. And once you've filled it up, you can then use the not included from factory dipstick, which, like I said, it's not included from factory. They do include a dipstick tube, but not the dipstick itself. This is apparently a dealership specific tool, which seems really dumb. But either way, I bought it on eBay for like £10, so highly recommend you get one if you have a B8.5 S4. Either way, to install it, you can just remove the cap that they come included with and pop it in. Now, the reading that I am getting here is without the engine started, which means the oil filter housing is not full, and so this isn't a fully accurate measurement. This is a little on the low side, so what we need to do is A, fill it up a bit more, and B, we can also double check by seeing how much oil we got out of the engine by filling our used can with it. So as you can see, this is a 5 litre can, but I filled it all the way to the spout, which means more like 6 litres. And this is my final oil level after starting the engine. I'm fairly happy with it. I've got some spare if I need to top it up, and the MMI says that I have a full oil level too. So that is how you do an oil change on a B8.5 S4. It's a fairly easy job. If I wasn't recording, it would have taken me about an hour to do all in, although it ended up taking me more like 3, but either way, it's fairly simple. It is kind of weird that you do need to buy a dipstick that's not a factory item, but you can read it from the in-car menu instead, so it's not too big a deal. The tools that you'll need, at least for this car, are a 36mm socket for the oil filter housing. You will want a smaller torque wrench so that you can torque up both the sump plug and the oil filter housing. And you'll need a collection of normal tools, ratchets, including a 6mm Allen for the sump plug, and you'll need a flathead or a Phillips head to be able to take a lot of the under tray bolts off. Either way, that is pretty much it. Oh, you will also want a pick set to be able to pull the O-rings out. But anyway, that is it for me. That's for me at the wheel. If you want to see more videos like this one on a weekly basis, then hit that subscribe button and the bell notification icon. And there are a whole load of other videos that you can check out, including my comparison between a pro and a cheap car trolley jack. So if you're interested in that, check that out in the end cards as well. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Got any questions, leave those in the comments down below, and we'll see you all in the next video.